teaching at Hendrix College. I was going to put another subtitle down there, How Did I Get So Lucky? But I decided to incorporate that in the lecture instead. Okay? Just want to make sure that I'm all set. PowerPoint, meticulously crafted speech that I can completely ignore. Timer. Not working. You know me in technology. Timer is working. I've got not one but two handkerchiefs in case things get bad. Hold it. Hearing aids on full. Next. Thanks. Thank every one of you for showing up today. It really does mean a lot to me to have you here to share these memories with me, and it says a lot about Hendrix College and the connections that it helps make between good people. So, okay, I need to do some formal thanks. I need to thank Pamela and the Alumni office for setting this up, for asking me to do a lecture, which was the perfect excuse for me to dust off the photo albums and look into some file cabinets and wallow in nostalgia for a little bit. I want to thank Hendrix for being the kind of school that recognizes and celebrates these minor milestones, and also, frankly, for being the kind of school that attracts bright, enthusiastic, pleasant, fun students, and you know who I'm talking about. I want to thank my colleagues very, very much for their support over the years. Frankly, if I have one regret about my 30 years here, it's that I probably have been too damn busy to really show my appreciation to my colleagues for their help, their support, their counsel, their friendship. So I'll try to do better in your time, okay? Okay, now this I have scripted out here because it's going to be tough. Hang with me. At this point, I need to single out one former Hendrix, damn it. We're off to a bad start. One former Hendrix employee for special thanks. Those of you who were around campus here back in 1996 might remember seeing this ad I placed in the Hendrix profile. Diane, you're not applauding.
Still mad.
Thank you for saying yes. I want to thank you for allowing me the time and space I needed to be the best professor I was capable of being. You never complained about all the long and weird hours I spent in the office. You cheerfully held down the fort time and time again when I went gallivanting all over the planet with students for weeks on end. And you were always there to listen to my silly little stories about the many pleasures and the occasional hassles of teaching. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Some of you might not recognize Gail sitting next to Diane there. Gail, thankfully, taught me a little phrase in German several years ago. It goes like this: Papa, du bist nah am Wasser gebaut. What that means is literally, Dad, you're built near the water. The water. Well, the thing is, Gail apparently thinks that it means something like, Dad, you're a sentimental sack. From my professional perspective, a better translation would be, Dad, I really admire how in touch you are. Okay. You would think after being a teacher for 43 years, I would have gotten over the worst of stage fright, but I'm still all of Twitter here. I mean, if this is sort of unusual for me. If this were a typical German class, I would have about 7 students. I would be throwing handouts at you right and left, and probably most reassuring, I would have my outline here on a transparency, and would be projecting it with an overhead projector. By the way, Bobby, no, it doesn't matter. Bobby told me literally an hour ago that I am the last professor on Hendrix campus to use an overhead projector. I'm damn proud of it. Seriously. Oh, and one other problem. I'm stuck behind this lectern. That's not the way I like to teach, but so be it. I'm resigned to it. Seriously, I am truly delighted to be here today to celebrate the many, many joys of teaching, being a teacher here for the last 30 years. Just seeing so many familiar faces brings back many, many fond memories. But on a deeper level, I hope that my comments here today, and my reminiscences, there we go, and pictures this afternoon will likewise remind you of good times and things you've done, classes, extracurricular activities, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope we can share memories together this afternoon. Okay, how did I wind up teaching? It wasn't a slam dunk. I was not predestined to teach. I went into German basically because it was fun and because I knew majoring in German as an undergrad would be my ticket to spending a junior year abroad. That was as far as I thought. When actually, I need to tell you this. Teaching literature or any practical application for German was the furthest thing from my mind. So I can remember at graduation in 1973 telling my friends, and this is a verbatim quote, "I'm never setting foot in a college classroom again." 7.5 years of graduate study later, 3 graduate degrees, and after having stood up in front of my German classes roughly 10,000 times, I can say without doubt and without equivocation, what a dumb shit. Okay, what makes and made and still makes teaching so attractive to me and to so many of us in this room? For me, frankly, it was a lot of it was practical considerations. One, that's the German one. I get paid an honest wage, mostly for sitting around and talking with neat people about interesting things. That's good. 2, I have flexible working hours. Lots and lots. The academic calendar gives us summers not off, but it gives us summers to throw ourselves headlong into other interesting activities like study abroad, taking students abroad and like that, but more on that later. And fourth, this is pretty idiosyncratic, but being a professor at Hendrix, where teaching is so clearly a priority, has given me the luxury to always prepare my classes to my own minimal standards. That pause was not built in. It has been such a gift to never have to scrimp, to always go into my classes prepared. Or at least I thought I was prepared until I got there, but you know. To have time to, for example, memorize every student's name before the first day of class. To always get back every single assignment to the next class period. I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. But Hendrix was the kind of place that allowed me the freedom to focus on what I thought was necessary and important. Thank you, Hendrix. Thank you. Okay, and by the way, you might be thinking perfectionist or even OCD, and you're probably right. Oudekerk compulsive disorder. by all those things aside, by far and away the most important reason for loving teaching is the contact with students inside and outside the classroom. It is frankly flattering and oh so energizing to work with bright, well-informed young adults who are genuinely enthusiastic about and what your chosen field is. So ultimately, it is you students out there who have kept me excited about and enjoying teaching for all these years. For that, I thank you sincerely. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all the fun. So, okay, next. Why German? What's so special about German? Clearly, I love teaching, but why German? What still gets me out of bed every morning at 5 a.m. After all these years? For one thing, teaching is all about communication. It's about connecting. So I can walk into the classroom and say, Guten Tag, and I'm teaching already. It's great. That's a good feeling. Another thing is when I when I have a student in German 110, they probably know no German whatsoever, and I can follow them and nurture them all the way from total beginner to, in some cases, true fluency in the language. That is a great feeling. Thirdly, because high culture, quote unquote high culture, is an integral part of the broader German curriculum, I'm constantly discovering and rediscovering aspects of art, architecture, literature, et cetera, and that's a gift. That's an absolute gift. And lastly, folks, somebody has to take students to Germany and France, and Peru and Haiti and et cetera, and it might well be. Okay, without further ado, the joys of teaching. I sincerely hope that all of you out there, faculty and students alike, love your discipline as much as I happen to love mine, as much as I happen to love German. After all, what's not to love about a language that produces words like this? Going backwards. There it is. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not actually going to pronounce them. We've only got half an hour. Okay? Take a deep breath. In grad school, they tell us to bring along a snack if we're given. Rindfleisch, Etikettierungs-, Überwachungsaufgaben, Übertragungsgesetz. Totally. I use this all the time, actually. One of the neat things about if you listen closely, you might have actually heard the Doppler effect. Got to pay close attention. Okay. Grotesquely long words like compound nouns like this are called Bandwurmwörter, so literally tapeworm words. Fortunately, there are a lot of significantly less cumbersome compounds in German, some of which are actually sort of fun to figure out. I'd like to conduct actually a brief experiment here, so I will ask only those people who have never had a bit of German to try to guess the English translation for the following words. Eisbär. Only if you haven't had German. What do you think Eisbär might possibly be? Ice and bear. You've had German before.
Popsicle.
Pardon?
Popsicle.
Oh, I like it. I like it. How about a bear that is normally found only in icy regions? Polar bear. Polar bear. Okay. How about a Halbinsel? Half of an island.
Peninsula.
Thank you. Peninsula. Absolutely. Krankenwagen.
I've never had German with you.
That's
I
right.
swear I've never even seen a German word.
Oh.
I'm
See me
afraid
after
of
class.
German.
How about Krankenwagen?
It's an ambulance.
It is indeed an ambulance. Fingerhood. That's a little bit more challenging, but I think fingerhood. It's a little protection for the top of your finger. Thimble. Thimble. Yep. Fingerhood. And last but not least, handschuh. It's a glove. It's a glove. Okay? All right. Well, I also really enjoy introducing students to concepts that do not have a direct English equivalent. So, for example, Schadenfreude, most of you probably know, Misdifdeutung, it's this vague feeling of pleasure at the misfortune of others. Fernweh is related to Wanderlust. Let's do this, okay? Wanderlust, but it's even stronger, implying a pressing need to be someplace else, exotic. Fremdschämen is an interesting concept. It's that cringing feeling that you get when somebody else makes a total ass of themselves. Be it a personal friend, media personality, a politician, whatever. Okay. Somebody who has Sitzfleisch possesses the physical and mental fortitude to patiently sit through, for example, a long, boring lecture. The expression doch is maybe one of my favorites here. It means literally to contradict a negative statement. So, for example, if I were to claim that German is not hard, Deutsch ist nicht schwer.
Doch.
Thank you. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. And frankly, if you don't think that little four-letter word is cool, all I can say is, doch. Okay, folks, you may not believe this, but I even enjoy teaching German grammar. Now, the question, of course, is, do my students enjoy learning German? That is the point. Having fun with German grammar might be asking a lot, but if you like a challenge, German is your language. Take, for example, German prepositions. Unlike the impoverished English language, in which prepositions only take the so-called object case, so with her, not with him, for him, not for he, okay? Unlike English, German prepositions allow you to choose, you don't have any choice, okay. You have to choose, there we go, between the accusative, the dative, and the genitive. So how does that play out in real life? The dog, auf Deutsch. Der Hund, okay. That's the way it would appear in the dictionary, and of course this immediately presupposes that you recognize that German German nouns are gendered. Der Hund, die Katze, the cat,
Das Kind.
Das Pferd, das Kind. Okay, I didn't want to put the kind in. So, der, die, das, okay? That's for some people that's enough of a problem, but it gets worse. Der Hund is how it would appear in a dictionary. But if you decide that you want to say, for example, for the dog, it suddenly has to be für den Hund. If you want to say with the dog, mit dem Hund. If you want to say despite the dog, trotz des Hundes. So accusative, dative, genitive. Are you ready to give up? See all the enthusiastic German students here? I bet you the answer is no, more. Oh, yeah, dog. Well, there's a category of German prepositions, including next, that makes you choose. Do you go with the accusative, neben den Hund, or do you go with the dative, neben dem Hund? And about at this point, I suspect many of you are saying to yourselves, does it really make a difference? Or why should I care? Who gives it in? Okay. Well, let me demonstrate how significant this difference between accusative and dative is. Wir essen im Restaurant. Wir essen im Restaurant. English. We eat in the restaurant. Okay, that's dative. Now, if you were to make what would probably be a mistake and said wir essen ins Restaurant, this would immediately conjure up the image of eating your way slowly and inexorably into the restaurant. chewing on the witch's. So it does make a difference. Okay. So, bottom line, if anyone dares walk up to you and say German prepositions are not difficult, deutsche Präpositionen sind nicht schwer, sind nicht kompliziert. What are you going to say? But enough German grammar. I'm going to say that, and a big collective sigh of relief goes up in the crowd. Okay, I also love introducing my students to the wonders of German high culture, partially because it allows me to enjoy masterpieces of architecture, literature, etc., right along with my students. In my German 230 course, for example, my students and I read to my students passages from glorious German literary works, such as Goethe and Heine's love poetry, Grimm Brothers fairy tales, Nietzsche's sardonic, biting aphorisms, Kafka's troubling parables, etc., etc., etc. It's wonderful. But the fun does not stop there. Musik. We also listen to timeless musical classics from the likes of Bach, Händel, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, und Wagner. Okay? It's a delight. It's an absolute delight. We start that next week, German 230, okay? Okay, in the very same course, we also treat ourselves to excerpts. Okay, here we go. We view architecture from 2,000 years of German history. For example, Porta Nigra in Trier, Charlemagne Chapel in Aachen, the Mainz Romanesque Cathedral, Cologne's glorious Gothic cathedral, Marxburg, a fortress on the Rhine, and Augustusburg Palace. And by the way, I see a whole bunch of you out there who are doing Hendrix in Bonn this coming summer. We will see every one of those this summer. Bingo, Aaron. Yes. Yeah, it's great. It's phenomenal. Okay, folks. If you haven't by now sensed the great joy it brings me to share my love of these works with my students, you haven't been paying attention. Okay. Then there's German history. I will not pretend that I love German history the way I love Self-Portrait by Dürer or Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It sure makes for interesting classroom discussion. German history is not particularly cheery, but, well, I'll tell you what, I will let this list speak for itself. German history, no history. Oh, it has lots of history. So, I won't comment on these. 1914, 1923, 1929, 33, 39, 1942, 1945, 49, the 70s, 1986. The bottom line is that you can sort of sum up basically a century of German history in 10 words, to wit. War, hyperinflation, depression, dictatorship, war 2.0, genocide, subjugation, division, terrorism, and nuclear Armageddon. It's been a wild ride. And yet, Germany has come through it all. I like to point out to my students that Germany is a model of stable, prosperous democracy and among the most respected nations in the world on just about every international opinion poll that we can come up with. More so than the United States. We might make a note of that. Okay. The joys of teaching are clearly not limited to the classroom. Oh, okay. Even at a school like ours, that proudly and effectively promotes experiential learning, I'd argue that German and the other languages are particularly blessed when it comes to institutional support for extracurricular activities, thanks primarily to the generous financial and logistical commitment of the Hendricks Murphy Foundation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the foundation for being so instrumental in making so many pleasant and fun and instructional extracurricular activities possible. Many of you students out there, I'm sure, will have fond memories of things like Kaffeestunde, the German coffee hour, which has been happening every Friday from 4 to 5 for over 20 years now. German Immersion House, which has traditionally been conducted at the Corner House every third year since the 1980s. And by the way, it is with a definite gratitude and pleasure that I note that a totally student-initiated German theme house is going into the Corner House this next year. That's I won't point to my daughter. The German Christmas Club Christmas party is one of my favorite extracurricular activities. And by the way, I might add that among these students here in this rogues gallery of German majors and minors, there are at least, to my knowledge, 3 students who are here today from as far away as Florida and Kentucky. Thank you. Follow the Wall Day. One of my favorite, at irregular intervals through the years, the German club has commemorated the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Probably the most memorable celebration was back in 2010, when students built and decorated a chest-high Berlin Wall straight across the middle of the old Hulen cafeteria. The wall divided the whole dining room into, on one side, a Spartan East Germany, replete with bare tables, propaganda posters, and very limited food options. Boy, were some students surprised. And the other western side, a cheerful, welcoming consumer's paradise. My students actually got a mention in the New York Times for that event. German Immersion Weekend coming up this coming weekend. Sign up. I have sign-ups in my bag here. Sign up by Monday. Okay. Anyhow, German Immersion Weekend held every spring at Mount Eagle Retreat Center. As many of you students out there can attest to, this 3-day event is proof positive that relaxing, having fun, and speaking German are not mutually exclusive. Okay? The joys of volunteering with students. Like many of you out there, I've been fortunate enough to participate in wonderful Hendricks sponsored service trips. This World War II vintage DC-3 flew a group of students and me to Haiti for 3 weeks of volunteer maintenance work on a hospital compound. I was also fortunate enough to travel to Peru to help with construction work on the church. Now, admittedly, this is not the construction work. This was taken several days later on a family side trip to Machu Picchu. And I just love this picture. Okay. How did I get so lucky? Okay. All right, here in the States, I particularly enjoyed working alongside student members of the Hendricks for Habitat Club on many a work Saturday over the years. For our 2001 spring break project, we conducted a so-called blitz build. We raised a total of $8,000 and managed in the space of 7 short days to take the house from the bare foundation you see here to this. That was an amazing experience. It was so wonderful to work with the students on that. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget a lot of what I'm talking about here. How did I get so lucky? Okay, professional development and travel experiences. I know a lot of you out there, faculty and staff, have benefited from college support for trips to conferences, professional development seminars, et cetera, et cetera. For me, this has mostly meant study abroad. I'm on board. A few highlights. China. I gave a lecture series there where we were wined and dined within an inch of our lives. The hospitality was overrated, to put it mildly. 2-week professional development seminar that Hendrix sponsored. Thank you, Hendrix, in Turkey. It was amazing. The people, the sights, everything. This picture was taken during one of at least a dozen trips that my family took all over Germany during the most recent of 2 sabbatical stays that we've had in that country. Those of you who've studied abroad will understand the magic of living in a foreign country, but it is truly hard to put into words how professionally beneficial and how personally glorious it was to spend a total of roughly 1.5 years living in Germany with Diane and Gail. It was fabulous. How did I get so lucky? I started teaching at Hendrix in the fall of 1989, 3 months before the fall of the wall on November 9th. A few days later, a German friend of mine sent me this newspaper. The euphoric headlines read, "All of Germany is celebrating," and "The biggest hole yet in the wall." As you can no doubt imagine, this was and remains an intoxicating moment in German and world history for me. I felt the seismic changes intensely. I had been in East Germany maybe half a dozen times. I'd taken students to East Germany, students from Center College. I had good friends living in the communist East Berlin, and I'd even had the unsettling experience of being interrogated in a small, dark room under one bare light bulb by 3 East German border police agents. It was hair-raising. I had hair. But bottom line, I guess it's not surprising that the images of hundreds of thousands of deliriously happy East Germans streaming into the West brought tears to my eyes, and frankly still does. Okay, the following summer I spent, thanks to Hendrix, 3 weeks in East Berlin at an international teachers seminar. It was unforgettable, and being able to bring back that information and those experiences and share these personal brushes with history with my students has been fabulous, just fabulous. Okay, the joys of taking students abroad. This is the section of my talk that I refer to as the well, duh, because it has to be obvious that taking students abroad and watching their personal growth and linguistic growth has been one of the great joys of my teaching experience and of my life. So, let's see, okay. I think we've got a couple of people, and if not here, then maybe coming in by thanks to live streaming. In any event, this is Hendrix in London, 2002. In January of 2002, Diane and I took our then 5-week-old daughter to London. The group spent 10 wonderful, invigorating weeks living at the Ridgemont Hotel, right there, exploring the city, traveling to Bath, Stonehenge, and Edinburgh, and taking in unbelievable plays. Plus, for the first time, I got to teach a course in English. It was weird at first, but I got it. You can imagine I jumped at the chance to do it again in 2007 and fell in love with London and teaching abroad. 3 years later, I was selected to do the Hendrix in Florence program. Now you might be thinking that this is a pretty cushy job, and you might be right if you are the kind of person who, for example, likes living in a restored 16th century Italian villa, literally around the corner from the main cathedral. If you like being absolutely bombarded by Italian Renaissance art and sculpture, if you like traveling to places like Siena, Pisa, Rome, and if you like world-class caprese sandwiches, but only if you're that kind of person. All right, let's see, let's skip that, okay. 3 years later, and I am starting, there it is. 3 years later, and I am starting to get embarrassed. Once again, I took a bunch of students abroad to Lyon and had a fabulous time, Arles and Avignon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. You might be wondering at this point how it is that a professor of German was taking students all over the planet except to Germany. I did take students on a sort of a not-for-credit 2-week trip to Germany. The highlight of that was always the homestay at our sister city of Quakenbrück. And I cannot tell you what a wonderful experience it is at the end of that stay to hear the students say, Ich liebe meine Familie, I love my family. The fact that they would get to feel so comfortable in the new culture and the new language, that's what teaching is all about. It was wonderful. How did I get so lucky? Okay. Chronologically last, but certainly not least, the month-long Hendrickson Bond program I've led for the past 2 summers has been perhaps the most joyous single teaching experience of my life. How did I get so lucky? It was absolutely sublime to see you guys, and you know who you are out there, become noticeably more fluent and more comfortable in German, to watch you become noticeably more at ease with the new culture. And again, that's pretty much what teaching is all about. Last category, the joys of having had an impact on the lives of a student. I'm sure every professor out there has his or her own folder full of messages they've received over the years from students expressing gratitude for something they perceive, at least, the professor has done for them. I want to share a couple of my favorites here with you. I'll just let you read that for a second. 8 classes with me. I wouldn't take it. I don't have that much to tell, but okay. The rest of it, no comment. Okay. Anyhow, some expressions of gratitude come in other forms, like this Get Well card from international students, this piece of the Berlin Wall that a former student of mine shipped off personally 2 months after the fall of the Berlin Wall. This picture of German majors who were weekending in Amsterdam happened across Oudekerk's Brug, and now what they were doing in the red light district, I'm not sure. And this copy of a former student's 2018, so fresh, hot off the press, PhD dissertation in engineering from the University of Stuttgart, not Stuttgart, Stuttgart, okay? It is an amazing feeling to see a student that you've had in German 110, beginning German, write 200 plus pages of flawless, dense, academic German. And you might be thinking, I plant the seed. They take it from there. That's what teaching is all about. Okay? It just occurred to me, dense academic German, I'm sorry for being redundant. What kind of academic German is there? Okay. By the way, this same student was in a German house junior or senior year and wound up marrying the German speaking resident director, and now they have 3 little kids, all of them intensely blonde. So having an impact on students' lives. Okay? Folks, I could go on, and probably already have. Yes, I have indeed. Okay, so finishing up. I would just be citing additional examples of the same basic fact. Teaching at Hendrix these past 30 years has been a simply incredible opportunity for me to connect with many, many wonderful people in many meaningful ways. Meaningful for me at least, I hope for you as well. I truly do not know how I got so lucky, but I guess all I can do is try to be a little zen about it. And that's tough, but I'll work on it. And just humbly say one more time, thanks for everything, Hendrix. It's been a great ride. See me Monday. Fun in, everybody. Hi, Portia. Hi.
Oh, sorry. Wayne, you're gonna have to turn around for a
Oh,
picture.
sorry.
I'm not as good as the photographers, but you know what? I'll do in a pinch. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.